We kind of went through very quickly, but saw the different animals from the lions in chapter 38 and the ravens and the eagles at the end after the hawks. And the eagles talk about the young suck the blood. And you say, well, that may be a buzzard instead of an eagle. But you think about what what we see in Matthew and Luke. When Jesus talked about where the eagles gather, where the carcass is, the eagles gather. If you can just picture, it's not sucking blood, but it's plucking out. It's bringing out the meat from the carcass. And that might have blood in it. But he's not a vulture, he's still an eagle. And so we looked at all of that and realized that here's the fact that God created them. And especially as these, like an eagle, so far removed from ourselves, and the mountain goat, so far removed from ourselves, that we don't see their activities of their life, of conception and giving life to their young, and they're so far removed from us. But they're not far removed from God. In fact, He put them here on this earth, and they have those distinctive characteristics. We see the ostrich. Ostrich can run 40 miles an hour. You're not going to try to outrun him, but the ostrich is kind of stupid from our perspective, and doesn't even care for their young sometimes. And yet they're swift, and they have their characteristics that are different. Who made that variety in the animal kingdom? It's God. And so in this latter part of chapter 9, we're going to focus on two animals. They each have a full chapter of almost about the things as God is closing his argument with God and trying to help him to understand that he doesn't know all things. So we open up we consider the instinctive nature of the animals. How did Job respond inwardly and outwardly at this point? How did Job respond to all of this? Okay. Then Job answered, we're in chapter 40 and verse 3. He answered Jehovah. So here's the summation. I want to look at what God said first and see if we have understanding, because our translations may not, I know they're not the same, but we need to, what is the uniting thought in it? Moreover, Jehovah answered Job and said, shall he, my Bible says, cavilleth, argue, have a quarrel, have a discussion where you're agitated maybe. He that cavilleth contend with the Almighty. Are you going to now realize you're standing before the Almighty? By the way, He made all these animals with all their instincts, and you know all about that. Of course, He doesn't. He that argueth with God, let him answer it. So here's his invitation, that you want to get on the plane with God and argue about His wisdom of how He's done things, especially in your life. Have at it. What does Job say? Behold, I am a small account. What shall I answer thee? You want to answer me, Job? Who am I? So what is he inwardly? Very small, right? I'm not in that place to answer you, O God. Inwardly, he feels that way. Well, rightly so. I mean, you've gone through looking at all this instinct of these animals and realize they all come from God, and you don't know about a lot of the things that take place that God sees. High on those mountains, away from the city and so forth. Behold, I am a small account. What shall I answer thee? And then, as David says, I lay my hand upon my mouth, but he's not going to stop speaking, is he? I understand I can't answer you, but I'm not going to stop complaining. I'm not going to stop wanting to know what I don't know from you. And that's why he says, once I have spoken, it says, and I will not answer. Yea, twice and I will proceed no further. So once I have spoken, he'll speak yea again. Yea twice. But I'm not going to get in arguing about you. He still hasn't said I've sinned. But he knows right now he is no match for God. And of course we ought to know that anyway. But what has happened, Job has got to the point that he thinks God's not ruling with justice. Believes he's there. And he has confidence that he's righteous before him. And he doesn't understand, if he surely doesn't go with the friends that you are suffering, Job, because you're a what? You're a sinner and a hypocrite. You must have done something very bad. We've seen all those accusations that are not true. And last one, the last young man, so maybe it's kind of a discipline. You get a chance to change your life and turn to God. And this is this idea of the discipline. Look at it that way. And Job said, he still hasn't sinned. So he is now taken away where he has spoken without knowledge and getting in a discussion of contending with God. And he realizes, I can't answer you. I can't answer you. I'm going to still speak. I will still speak, but I can't answer you in a court of law. when you're the judge and creator of all. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And so God responds again. And in verses 6 through 9, Jehovah answered Job. And how did he do that? In a still, small, soft voice? With just softness and tenderness. And God can do that. But the occasion helps us understand how is he getting ready to approach. So inwardly he's that way, but outwardly he's still going to speak. We got that. So pick the one. God's second speech opens with a challenge of Job's wisdom, or challenge of Job. With a challenge of Job's, is he speaking about wisdom, or God's power, or his mercy? Let's just read this in verses 10 through 14. When he said, verses 6 through 8, you gird yourself, wilt thou like a man, wilt thou even annul my judgment? That's what you're really thinking. I haven't been just with what I've done. Will thou condemn me that thou mayest be justified? Is that what you're doing, Job? Or hast thou an arm like God, and canst thou thunder with a voice like him? That's why the whirlwind's there. He's building up. What is he doing here which will match God? And so he says, deck thyself now with what? Excellency and dignity. Well, wisdom, mercy, power. Well, it could be a lot of that. Array yourself with honor and majesty. Pour forth the overflowings of thy what? Anger. Maybe not so much mercy. And anger doesn't work the wisdom of God. I might be leaning to power just by that verse. Let's see if that's consistent. And look upon every one that is proud and do what? Abase him. Look on every one that is proud and what? Bring him low. And tread down the wicked where they stand. Mercy? It might be a wise thing to do at some time. Absence and power. Hide them in the dust together. Blind their faces in the hidden place. Then will I also confess of thee that thine own right hand, power, can save thee. Do you agree with that? Or you like mercy? I just think God's loving and merciful, and he would never, try to exalt his power. He's humble and meek. And wisdom, He knows how to handle things, and he need to do that with kindness and so on. They have its place, and we are to act that way as well. But what does God say? I want you to feel the thrust of a whirlwind. Have we felt that in the last month or so in our area? I felt it in this building, and we didn't have any damage. I saw the blackness, I saw the wind, I saw the rain horizontal, and I said, well, is it coming through here? It just came, wasn't too far from here. And some of you felt the damage of that. Some of you felt the fear of that. And it's just God's power. We see it in nature. Who's behind nature? In fact, who controls nature? God does. God does. And so he appeals to him. You don't think my wisdom is such that I've kind of been unjust? And maybe you think that I ought to be showing you mercy right now in your situation, and reality is he's going to bless him more than he had before. And it doesn't mean God's not merciful. But what did he want him to know at this moment of truth within his soul? Do you have my kind of power? Do you have the power that with your exalted, see the right hand, not the left one, the right hand, the exalted power, and that is the ultimate power that you have, and it's exalted, you saved yourself. And what would we do, and what does Job have to do? We just kind of lower ourselves. Got the point. Got the point. And so God opens up these two beasts to him. He wants Job to see that. And we'll see in the latter part of 40, all through the chapter of 41, he just talks about these two beasts. Well, you talked about the hawk, you talked about the eagle, you talked about the raven, you talked about the lion, but he wants to speak the truth about these beasts, and we'll see how that happens. So, question number 8. Do you see his power being exalted? And knowing that Job, you question my wisdom. You're no match for the wisdom, because you can't even answer how I've get the instinct into these animals that are all different. They have different instincts. I think that's why the ostrich is brought in there. It's just a variety, but they have their strengths. That ostrich can run fast. It's the biggest bird, and it can run very fast. And all of them have their differences. So he's working on Job to bring him around to where he won't, not only not going to stand and argue with God as in a court of law, but he's finally going to stop his mouth and say, I've sinned. And we'll get into that in our next lesson. Okay? Identify the behemoth. Because that's what we have here in this latter part of this chapter that we're seeing, the verse 15. Behold, now behemoth, who made him? The same God who made you, Job. Isn't that what he says? In essence, I'm the one who made you too. And what a difference. What a difference of God's power and wisdom. And it's interesting, the very things that we cannot see with our experience in life, and we think about what happens after death. Paul will argue in 1 Corinthians 15, for example, when people are saying, how will that body be raised? And they were thinking it's idea that it's just so impossible that indeed that could happen. Therefore, Paul says that's a foolish question. Well, Paul, they just don't think that's possible. He says that's foolishness. And how does he get them to see how foolish that is? He takes them to the garden. Are you preparing the ground for your spring garden? Some of you are. Planting the seeds. And well, the seed has to die, and for it become, it doesn't look the same when it comes forth from the earth, and you get that picture, say, oh, I see that. And why don't you think I can bring from the dead a different body, a different kind of looking body that he's going to call a glorified body, which we've never seen. How are the dead raised? Well, plant a garden. And then he says, when you talk about the flesh, there's the flesh of man, there's the flesh of beast, and there's a terrestrial, this idea of earth, we have a glory of that, and then there's terrestrial glory of the stars and the planets and the sun, all of those things. That there's a variety and a difference. Is man's flesh like a bird? Is a bird's flesh like a moose? There are differences. And that is the great power of God, and it's the great wisdom of God. He created not only this earth habitable, photosynthesis, we're breathing, not even thinking about it, and where we go about our day, sun's going to rise, sun's going to set, and all of that is to keep life going. And what he's done, he's created a variety of life, I think, to make it interesting for us. Oh, that's good for food. It's part of allowing us to eat. It's for man's benefit. But what he's seeing, what he wants Job to see, not only they exist, and if you're brave enough, you can go kill one of them, eat them. Maybe you might want to stay away from the Leviathan, which is understood. And all of those things, but he's made them, there's a variety in that. And that's what we're seeing. That makes things interesting as we dwell upon this earth in our short time. But who's behind that all is God. And he wants him to understand that, so he goes in detail. And some of this we might not be able to understand, but it's poetic language. Fire coming out of the nostrils must be a dragon. Yeah, they had dragons back there in 2000 BC. But it could be the imagery of just seeing something rise out of the water in the early morning and among the reeds and blowing smoke out of the nostrils. That's the idea of the spray of the water at the time. You find yourself in that picture. It's poetry dealing with these two animals. And so we just ask the question, first of all, behemoth. Well, that's a guy that needs to go on a diet. Behemoth. Or is it an animal? Well, no. Okay, what do you think it is, David?
Well, it's just, the behemoth is a large land animal, but we don't know its exact identity. Now, some have speculated that it's a dinosaur, and I would not rule out that possibility. It could be, but it's some large land animal that, in looking at it, I don't see anything currently in existence that really totally matches all of it. I mean, it's not an elephant.
Does he dwell in the water, maybe?
Well, the behemoth doesn't. He's landing. But the Leviathan, who knows what that is. Could be a blue whale.
Well, you've gone a lot of different ways. 23, behold, the river overfloweth, he trembleth not. He's confident, though a Jordan swell, even to his... How can you not be in the Jordan River and have your mouth in it? I think it is a large animal, land. You say you went dinosaur, you went all this, that may be true, but it kind of reminds me of hippopotamus. He's big, behemoth. And he may have a short tail, but it's stiff like a cedar. And his strength is in his loins. And he can be, I don't care if the Jordan swells, and it does. In fact, that's when God said, now I want my people to cross the Jordan in the promised land. When it's swelling, it doesn't scare him. He lieth under the lotus trees, maybe the papyrus trees. What the distinction, is this in Egypt? Is this an animal that's in Egypt, the Nile River? Because he's dwelling around places where the water is. are the Jordan, or maybe that's in the area of Palestine that we know. Well, where's the Jordan? So we may connecting that and not some animal that be in the Nile River, in the Nile River, but he's hanging around there, and he said the lotus trees that bring their shade, and the willows of the brook compass him about. And whether the river swells, it doesn't stop him, it doesn't faze him at all. And so there's that picture. So we talk about a dinosaur. I don't know, but I think it fits more like an animal that we would know as a hippopotamus. And I don't think there'll be anything that would contradict that. He is the chief of the ways of God, the idea of the largeness. And he only that made him giveth him his sword, where his power is, so he can defend himself and what he needs to do. Surely the mountains bring him forth food. Where all the beasts of the field, what do they do? They do play. He's a big beast, and yet animals can come around him and play. And also they bring forth the food. So it's the idea that, they're not scared of him that much. He's large and big, but he'll get his food. But the animals can come around and play. You don't do that with a Leviathan, but you do that with a behemoth or a behemoth. And so he describes that as animals like that. He moveth his tail like a cedar, and the sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are as tubes of what? Brass. His limbs are like bars of iron, strong, big, powerful. And yet, animals can play around him. And his mouth is confident, though the Jordan swell even to his mouth. You've seen the hippopotamus out there, land animal, dwelling under trees, and that. I think it fits that very well. But it was, to David's point, it was an animal that existed, and we're just trying to describe it as God describes it, and realize, well, that's who that is. Now, who is the Leviathan, you think? Yeah, crocodile. I think it's an alligator. Well, okay. But crocodile probably fits. Well, that's kind of what we'd see in maybe the Nile and so forth. And he begins to speak about him. And let's read and see if we get a feel of this. Canst thou draw out the Leviathan with a fish hook, or press down his tongue with a cord? Canst thou put a rope into his nose, or pierce his jaw through with a hook? Well, yeah, we do that at Louisiana all the time. Can he make? So will he make many supplications unto thee, or will he speak soft words unto thee? So we get the picture. So that you probably wouldn't want to try to do that to him, and trying to shut his jaws. Crocodile would fit very well with it. He's powerful. But he's now saying, did they make supplications to you? Will he make a covenant with thee that thou shouldest take him for a servant forever? You going to do that to a crocodile? What's your answer, class? No, that's right. That thou shouldest take him for a servant forever. Wilt thou play with him with a bird, as a bird? Let's have a little pet crocodile. I think I'll bring it to my girlfriend. She'll really like that. Wilt thou bind him for thy maidens? How'd you like to bring crocodile to school when you're in the first grade? Says Sally, I like this for you. I think they'd freak out, don't you? Will the bands of fishermen make traffic of him? Will they part him among his merchants? What's your answer to that? Had any fried alligator lately? Maybe not crocodile. But in our day and time, that's sometimes people might eat that meat. Not this time. Not in this time. It shows you that they were not trafficking him for meat. They just leave him alone because of that power, and it's hard to harness them with fish hook that they had at those days. But apparently, to me, this whole thing, bands of fishermen don't make track of it. We don't like him. We like red snapper. That's that Gallo said. Apparently, in their feast, they didn't want crocodile. Canst thou feel his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? There's a hardness of his body. The scales are so close together you can't penetrate through them, as he goes and tells us. Lay thy hand upon him, remember the battle, and do so no more. You know that's going to be a battle, and you're going to lose. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Will not one be cast down even in the sight of him? I don't want to go out there and grab him. Put a rope around his jaws. My parents don't like that meat. I'm not going to bring it home. So what's the purpose of that? But the point is that this is something you would want to avoid. None is so fierce that he dare stir him up. Who then is he that can stand before me? He's going to drive it home now to Job. Here is this animal, and the reality is he's fierce and you don't want to bother him. You don't want to stir him up. He said, Job, you're dealing with me. I'm like that. And he talked about making a covenant and praying that please take me, I'll be your servant forever. Look what God says. Who hath first given unto me that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven belongs to whom? Who's saying that? The crocodile, Job, or God? God. Why did you talk about this crocodile so much? Wanted you to get the understanding. You wouldn't go out there in the Jordan or the Nile, but say we're talking about the Nile and the crocodile. Fishermen, there's no market for that. We don't like the meat. It'd just be a lost battle. All I've got is a hook and a rope, and I get out in the water in his environment. I don't want to challenge him. And would he say, I'm making supplication to you, Job, and I'll be your servant forever, and you can make me your pet? And throw me around, and I'll be that way. That won't work. And so God is making the point, who is given to me that I have to repay him? I wanted to think about that, because that's found throughout the Bible. Paul would preach in Acts 17, here's all these gods, and there's unknown God. And God doesn't dwell in temple made by hands. He's the one that giveth life in all things. And he doesn't need service from man. He's not served by man's hands as though he needed anything. The whole world is his. And I think it's very important to get that into our mind, because in our day of time, I've heard people say, you know why God created you? Because he was lonely. And he wanted somebody made in his image so he could enjoy the fellowship. You are special to God, and you are special to God. We are made in the image of God. But he doesn't need me. He doesn't need anything from me. God, I know you're happy because I'm serving you. Well, he may be happy, but he's going to be rejoicing in the fellowship of his Son. He had that before he created you. And he's going to be the same God. He said, though if you deny me, I'm remaining faithful. I can't deny myself. I don't care what you do, in the sense that it's not going to affect me. Yes, I groan when men sin. I rejoice when men are saved. But it's not like I needed that from you. It's that you need to recognize I'm your creator. And you need to be doing that. But sometimes we switch that, and I've just heard people say, because we live in a time where people don't have a good self-image. I understand that. But we got to make ourselves, we realize we're in the image of God, and we've got to realize He's not my buddy. We're not sitting in the cockpit and say, hey, what do you think about it, Jerry? I'm going to do this and do that. We're navigating together? No. He's in control, and He doesn't need anything from the peanut gallery to say, I think it'd be a wiser way to do it this way. No. So we said, I want to know your ways. But right now, when I read this, it humbles me, and it's humbled Job, that God doesn't need anything from me to make him complete. I need him to be complete. And when we work it that way, He'll always be higher than we are, wiser than we are. And when we don't have answers yet, we'll just wait on the Lord. And Job is known for his patience. He waited on the Lord, and we'll see what happens next. So he's not through about talking about Leviathan. It says, I will not keep silence concerning his limbs. God said, okay, God, I got the point. Well, God wants to come as mighty strength, nor his goodly frame. Who can strip off his outer garment? Who shall come within his jaws? Who can open the doors of his face? Round about his teeth is terror. His strong scales are his pride. Shut up together with a close seal. One is near to another. No air can come between them. There's a scale so weak. No air can penetrate through them. They are joined one to another. They stick together so they cannot be sundered. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning torches. Thank you. Burning torches. Of course, the Daniel 10:16, the angel looked like torches, fire. And Ezekiel's creatures kind of have the same thing, and God's described that way in 2 Samuel. But it's poetic language. What might be in this one is just that smoke looked like fire coming out of his nostrils as he blows the bubbles and so forth, sneezes. Out of his mouth go burning torches, sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils the smoke goeth, that is the boiling pot that burneth rushes. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame come forth out of his mouth. In his neck abideth strength. His terror danceth before him. The flakes of his flesh are joined together. They firm upon him. They cannot be moved. His heart is as firm as stone. Verse 25, when he raiseth himself up, the mighty are afraid. The reason of consternation, they are beside themselves. If one lay at him with a sword, it cannot avail, nor the spear, the dart, nor the pointed shaft. He counteth iron as straw, brass as rotten wood. You get the picture, he's strong. And so what we see is that when we look at those two, what general characteristic do the behemoth, depending on how you want to pronounce that, and Leviathan have in common? What do they have in common? We see differences. You can play around a hippopotamus, but not, you don't want to be close to a crocodile. Untamable, that's good. Powerful, there's a strength and power, loins and the neck and all those things. There's this idea of his mightiness and power. Those are two powerful animals. Who made them with their differences? Who made them? It is God. And verse 32, he maketh the path to shine after him. One would think the deep to be hoary. Upon earth there is not his like, that is made without fear. He beholdeth everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. And so here is the idea of, we can relate that to God and his power, but there's a creation that we're setting forth there that becomes important. How did Job understand 41 and verse 11? And I jumped to that one a while ago, but what is the answer to that? Thou first given unto me that I shall repay him. Yeah, he needs nothing. If I want anything, I'll get it. The heaven, the earth belongs to me. And that becomes very, very important. All right. Let's look at how did Job understand, what did he understand about God right now? And we'll have to close real quickly. But what would that, Job answered Jehovah and said, what? I know that thou canst do all things. I mean, God just kept pounding. Yeah, he can do everything. And that there's no purpose of thine that can be restrained. Who is this that hideth counsel without knowledge? Now, Job's responding. Who is he talking about there? And we'll just stop right there. Who is he talking about right there? God? You hide counsel without knowledge? He's hiding some things, but it's not without knowledge. You go back to chapter 38, that's God opening up all of this thing about the animals. Who is this that is indeed hideth counsel without knowledge? You don't know everything. And he summed it up. And he's talking about himself. Therefore I have uttered that which I what? I understood not. Draw me a picture, God, and I'll understand how small I feel. He drew him a picture. But it wasn't fantasy. It was reality. And I think we can profit from that as well.